or even distant. But sometimes why is the key that can unlock so much to our lives. Join me as we explore the why with fascinating contributors to the world, those that entertain us, inform us, teach us about life, and if we're lucky, inspire the next in all of us. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and welcome to HeadRoom, a production of Rainlight and co-produced by Old Soul. Let's go. Why don't we go down the rabbit hole, everybody? I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger. I'm excited for this conversation with Nick Swinmurn. He is the founder of Zappos, as many of you know, but that's actually not what we're going to be talking about today. We want to talk about the next, and I put that in quotes, and what he's doing with Moons of Mars and Web 3.0 and NFT and all these things that so many of us are trying to get caught up on because it's going to be the new reality. Nick, I want to start with this. One, thank you for your time today. I think look, I get to read a lot of bios in the work that I do, and I will tell you that your bio was incredibly fascinating to me. And what I think I took from it was I felt like I was sitting with you in the room as you were talking about it. You were painting a picture. You were being humble and sharing your experiences. And I think for entrepreneurs out there of all shapes and sizes and backgrounds, I think getting an understanding of what it's like to be in the shoes of an entrepreneur that has both had success, but also had to make some tough choices and pivots in their lives, I think is very valuable for the next generation in that regard. Let's talk about this before we jump into Moons of Mars, because I'm very interested in what this is and for my own learning, and I think for the audience to understand the role NFTs will be playing in our lives. Can you talk a little bit about your relationship with success? Where are you?
Yeah.
Are you in good standing with success, or how do you understand it now at the age and sort of the level of wisdom and accomplishment that you've achieved?
Yeah. No, thanks for having me. Excited to have this conversation. I think it's a funny one because you try to define it internally, right? But a lot of the times it's hard to get to that place where you're okay with that and you're not just, on purpose or accidentally finding yourself drawn into like outside perceptions of success. So I'm great. I'm in a great place. Grateful for everything. Happy, healthy family and doing what I want to do and what I like to do. So I think, it couldn't really be a better place than that.
Did it take time for you to become comfortable with success and what that meant, not just internally, but really sort of externally, and then the role that you played in that narrative? Because I feel like for a lot of people, it becomes a story that they don't even know is being sort of written in real time. And we'd like to think it's choose your own adventure book series that I liked growing up, but sometimes it doesn't feel like we can choose what that next might look like. And our relationship to success can impact that ability to maybe control the narrative to some degree.
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of been in my own head. But I think definitely when I was younger, even going through Zappos, when I decided to leave Zappos and, the next day I started a new company, and I was aware of these probably imaginary, outside perceptions. And so I was kind of working for that instead of fully just being like, this is, what I want to do and how I want to do it. I was still doing that, but I was worried about or thinking about what are people going to think? And people expect something big and, should I be doing this? Because that's what's expected. And fortunately for me, I've never, you'd like to have at times it's like, oh, it'd be great to have a big following or to have, there's advantages that come with that. But for me, I've always kind of just preferred doing what I want. Even at Zappos, there was a point where it was like, I'm kind of bored. It's near the end. What can I do? And it was like, why don't you go be the face? Remember Tony saying, why don't you go be the face and just go do conferences and stuff like that. And I was like,
hit the circuit.
Yeah. And I'd actually just gotten married. I was like, I don't really like flying. I don't really like traveling that much. Okay, I'll try it. So I did a conference in Vegas, and it was easy. We're in Vegas. So it's like drive down to the Strip and just tell the Zappos story put together a presentation. Well, that's easy. I could do that all day. Right. But then it's like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll do it. And so it's like, start signing me up for conferences. I go out to New York. I'm not even checking. I'm not the most thorough person at times. I'm just like, well, let's wing it. Right. So I'm on some panel for search marketing. And it's like, what am I doing on a search marketing panel? And it's specifically focused on organic, unpaid. And this is like, I don't know, early 2000s. Like I didn't really know anything about it, right? So I go out there with the VP of marketing. It's like, okay, I'm going to sit on this panel with a bunch of experts, and I just kind of figured I'll wing it. And, questions came to me that I didn't have answers to. And I actually felt like the audience was like, what? When I would try to answer these questions. And I just felt like an idiot, right? I was like, I'm up here. This isn't like, why am I doing this? Like, first of all, she should be doing this instead of me because she's much more, well versed in this subject. And this isn't helping Zappos, right? Me being up here, and this isn't helping me. Like, why would I want to do this? So I came back. I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. And I think from that point, it kind of became like, I always had this, I actually can't remember the question that I started answering, but I've always had this thought of like, I'm just in my own little world, let's just be in my own little world and kind of do what I want to do. And I was fortunate to be able to have some financial success. So I was able to say, okay, what do I want to do? And do that. And what I realized over the years was I wasn't always most interested in the biggest thing, right? Like I've had a very hard time, which someone pointed out to me, and I hadn't really thought about it until then. Is like, I don't think you see any difference between $1 billion idea or $100 idea, right? It's just that you just seem to like the thrill of trying to create something. And I thought about it, and I thought that's true. So why don't I just embrace that instead of, I remember had some company I worked on along the way. I had a meeting with some footwear executive, and I can't even actually remember which company he was from. I don't remember how we got connected, but he's like, I want to hear about this new idea. And I said, okay, great. And, sat down to talk, and he's like, first of all, I know this is going to be big because I know you wouldn't be working on anything that wasn't going to be another $1 billion idea. And I just remember thinking, fuck, or, shoot, whatever. What? Like, what does that have to do with anything? I'm just excited about what I'm excited about. There's a bunch of opportunities, a bunch of things that are interesting. And so over the years, I realized once I kind of embraced that and took more of an approach of like, okay, this is the town I live in. What would be fun to open? I've always wanted to open a restaurant. Okay, you know what? We need a gym down here. How could I create a workout program? Like, hey, you know what? I want to open a store. What kind of store would I like to see here? I really got into that instead of focusing necessarily on tech and something that had to scale exponentially. It was like, well, I could do fun stuff that's just as creative and kind of gets the juices flowing that will benefit this community.
How much of being an entrepreneur
that seems fun.
How much of being an entrepreneur, Nick, is loving or getting a charge from the game of being an entrepreneur?
I mean, I think that's the whole thing, because you can't really fake that or recreate that, right? You can, a lot of people, different things appeal to them about starting a company or jumping into something early. And I think if the main thing that appeals to you is one, money, or two, like notoriety, you're just kind of chasing this weird path where you don't have there's no like foundation for either of those things to be built upon, right? So you're kind of like, I've worked on companies with people where it's easy so pivoting is interesting, right? I think it's perfectly natural and okay to pivot and say, you know what, this didn't work how I thought it would work. Or, hey, there's some new data which has made this seem less appealing, or something else seem more appealing, and kind of move in that direction. But a lot of times it's like, it just feels like you're talking to people. They're just like, well, this isn't big enough. This isn't big enough. Let's go. What else could be big enough? And it's like, I think like, you're doing it for something else, and you're letting something else drive the direction, which is going to be really hard to navigate in the long run. Like if you don't have a vision which is guiding the direction, then if it's money, your direction is going to kind of move around to wherever you think money might be. And that's just, I don't understand. For me, I'm not smart enough or whatever. I don't understand how you could constantly be guessing where that might happen. It's much easier when it's something where you just go into sleep and you're like, can't stop thinking about it. You wake up, half the time I go to sleep thinking I've got the world's greatest idea, and I wake up either forgetting what that idea was, not even thinking about it again, or realizing that it just doesn't seem as appealing the next morning, or I've thought of
maybe the timing.
The reason, yeah, you really understand, oh, well, this is why nobody's done it. But the best feeling is when you wake up and you're like, first thing you think of, and you're like, yep, I'm still excited about that. Let's go see what happens. And I think I've always been able to, compartmentalize that. It might just be that I just don't like, maybe I'm just very basic, and so I go, oh, okay. And I just kind of see like, all right, what would it look like? Like it always starts with,
it feels like it's a sense of,
stuff.
authentic sense of self, meaning, because when you're talking about your relationship to success and sort of how you've utilized that over time or gotten maybe comfortable in understanding that, and then hearing people who just assume, oh, it's Nick, it's going to have to be a big idea, that $1 billion idea, that there's that wrestling with your sort of authentic self. Like, no, this is really who I am. I have to lay down these tracks in my mind at night. And if they mean anything, they're going to stick. Right. And then I'm going to add layers to that. Right. Am I hearing, is that fair or foul sort of in my understanding of the way in which you're sort of thinking through this?
Yeah, no, that's accurate. It took a while. I guess, I don't know if it was a confidence or a security to be okay with someone else, especially someone else who you respected what they did, or you figured this person is smarter than I am, or they know a lot more about this industry. It took a while to get to the point of like, okay, you know what? I could spend all day listening to other people's opinions on where we should go or what we should do or how we should do it. And a lot of times that would be great advice. But like for me and the way I work, I think I'd rather just, I got to get it to a point that I understand like why and how vaguely we can do something, and then bring people in who I can explain that vision to them and figure out like, do you like this vision, right? Like, do you like this vision, and can you add to it and help evolve it in ways that I can't, versus, coming in and saying, no, you should chase this or chase that.
Let's talk about that concept of pivoting. I like that you brought that up, because I think for entrepreneurs, that is when I think of entrepreneurs and pivoting, it's those discussions you have with yourself when no one else is awake, or the phone is off, or you're in your office by yourself thinking about, is this a fork in the road, or how do I approach this? And I'm always interested in entrepreneurs, this concept of gut, right? I know you talk about being restless and, this feeling of restlessness, and then you pivot, right? Make big changes in that regard. So how do you understand that? And when you think about that, do you trust your gut? Are you someone that can go on instinct, and you've refined that skill over time? You've sort of sharpened that knife? And or how do you over time balance that with others? Like, how do you communicate that so that it is, we're in a collaborative world now, right? We're in a global economy. Unless it's the Nick show, I would imagine you have to collaborate with people at some level. And so how do you understand gut when you think about being restless and making a pivot?
I think I'm probably more aware of when I'm wrong than when I'm right? Like we don't, like, it's more, we look at it as a door, as like, hey, through this door, there might be an opportunity to be right. And those are the doors we should be walking through. But if we already know that the door we hope to walk through and be right doesn't feel like, it's good, then we should reevaluate. So I think my gut is more, I guess there's two parts to the gut, right? There's the exciting, like you got that, like almost like your stomach hurts. Like I have an idea, or I see an opportunity, and I think it would be more, if this feeling's not going away, it's going to be more painful to not pursue this than any potential pain that could come from pursuing it. That's one. And then there's the more nagging realization of like, either, hey, this isn't what I thought it would be, or I'm not the right person to be able to pull off what I hope to pull off, or, this team, we're not going to be able to do it, or, and so it's kind of balancing those. And I think the more costly one is ignoring the this might not work, right? Like, it's ignoring that, and either, look, and it's really easy. There's a bunch of reasons, and I've done it a bunch. In fact, the company I started after Zappos Stagger was this customization company, right? And so I was like really passionate about, if we could take what started with Zappos, I've got all this excess inventory, and that was kind of where the initial thought came from. It's like, could we add some kind of customization to it? And it morphed into, could we take licensed products and combine that with licensed, artwork and kind of come up with something new. And then I got to a point where I realized I was really focused on kind of that like front end kind of graphic possibilities and giving people these creative tools to kind of come up with their own creations. But really, this was going to be a manufacturing, the company was going to succeed based on, the manufacturing process, and the direct to garment machines at the time were super temperamental. And it's not like it wasn't something that would work. A lot of people could have made it work or would make it work. I just realized I'm not really passionate about like that, if that's what this company really would be. And the team I've assembled is probably not that passionate about that and probably not the right people. So I would have to now go out and I would almost be building a company that I wasn't really that passionate about. I didn't really want to do, right? Just to keep it going. So I made an even worse decision. Like I said, okay, well then let's just kind of tweak what we have to what we have. But like, it wasn't a fresh start of like, oh, here's a better direction. It was kind of like, well, we're already working with these, brands and artists and musicians. Why don't we kind of like pivot into like pre-printed, we'll design everything and sell it to you. And it's like, which kind of like, okay, cool. Creatively, that's still fun for us.
But it's one more layer.
It's another layer. And it's like not the original idea. And there's already a billion people offering, cool brands and pre-printed stuff. So how do you differentiate yourself? And it was kind of like, well, we already have all these things, so we might as well find a way to use them. And then that eventually morphed into like creating a graphic for a UFC fighter. And then that morphed into like sponsoring UFC fighters. And so I got this brand that now is like, has found actually some traction in this niche on like, sponsoring UFC fighters who will wear shirts with our logo out into the octagon. But if you do a Google search for the brand, Stagger at the time, the first thing that comes up is, create custom Madonna t-shirts. And it's like, so now it's like, oh my God, now I've got this brand that I'm actually excited about this opportunity now. It was, late 2000s, like fast growing space, this new emerging sport. There was an audience that was passionate about like, how do I want product and we could provide that. We're sponsoring good fighters, but because I wasn't able to make like the decision to like stop or start, go or no go. It was like, I just kept changing things. Now I'm in a position where I'm kind of limited because I've got this, conflict of I had spent X amount of time doing one thing under this brand. So then I thought, why am I not stopping this? Right. And that was probably the most confused or kind of down in the dumps is because I knew that I was doing the wrong thing. But I was like, ego was like, I feel like stopping it even to start something else at that time, I thought would be like seen as failure. Right. And then I thought people, this is the first thing coming out of Zappos, people expect something. And then I felt like, I've committed to people to work on this. On that project, I actually had to take a couple of Zappos investors, had invested in it, even though it was small amounts, it was mostly my own money. So it was like, I was like, okay, I'm able to stomach the pain of losing my own money, but like, I don't want to tell them that, that I've lost their money. And so it was just like this weird thing. And eventually I'm looking in the mirror every day wearing one of these shirts. And I realized, take the shirt off, put a blank t-shirt on because you're so confused. You're looking in the mirror and every day staring back at you is the logo of something which you're not happy with the direction it's going, and just stop, stop and just start again. So I stopped. And I just felt, there's always things in hindsight where you're like, nobody cared. Nobody was watching. Nobody cared. Nobody was like judging. It was like your perception of how you were being judged when it might not even be in reality.
Is this what people have to just go through? I mean, is this a lesson that young entrepreneurs can somehow, avoid? Because I can see it in your face. I can hear it in your voice, just that it's almost like an out of body experience that you're sitting there looking in the mirror going, it's almost like you're making a decision to divorce an idea, right? Like you're looking at this logo saying, I don't love you anymore.
It's like you become you start to identify with the project or the company as almost like you're part of your identity. Right? And so it's very hard to separate from that. And sometimes you're like, when it's going great, right? You see people that have this like increased sense of confidence where they can't, but then by being associated with something, but then when it's going bad, you see them going down. And I think the lesson over time is like, you just kind of see it for what it is. It's just an idea you had the opportunity to work on. Your obligation is to your team. And if you decide to take investors, but you just have to be, transparent and upfront and you've basically committed to do your best. If you don't think your best is no longer good enough or the opportunity is not what it was, you just convey that and explain, here's why I think this, here's what we're going to do about it.
HeadRoom is produced by Old Soul, a one-stop marketing agency that understands the power of brand and nuance. Reach out to my guy Matt at Old Soul and supercharge your brand and content strategy. That's Old Soul. Shoot Matt a note at aoldsoul.com. That's aoldsoul.com. And now, back to our guest.
Have you ever given thought, maybe over a glass of wine or just, it's almost like a campfire kind of moment when you're sitting there thinking, why do we as a society care so much about what your next is? And I'm saying you, meaning anybody that's had some level of success in selling a company, building something from scratch, because it feels like within that space and time, you've got sort of the original idea that becomes, right? That sort of makes the brand, that we put this undue pressure on people to create, their second act has to be even that much bigger and that much bolder. And I feel like it's very dangerous for those that are sort of reaping the rewards of innovators like yourselves, that we're forcing you to be thinking more often than not, gosh, maybe it's gotta be bigger and better. Or, how do I stay on this track that I've been on? It feels like we're wasting time, and we're negatively impacting creative innovators because I've heard this over and over again. It's like, yeah, but I was successful here, but if I fail this next time, it's all for naught.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I guess it's like, what was it like? Musicians always said they're remembered for their last album, not the best album. And so I think it's just perspective. I think it's perspective. I think so for me, being able to understand of like, wow, I screwed this up. And I started a company. I didn't create any value for anyone. I kind of zigzagged all over the place and ended up like, I should have done all these things differently. And then it was like this feeling of like, and it affected like your attitude and your like enthusiasm just on a day-to-day basis. And then when you finally, it got to be enough, right? Where it was like, stop. And then nothing changed. Like, it's okay, And so then at that point,
the sun still rose the next day.
Yeah. And I'd be lying if I said like, so from there it was easy to make perfect decisions. There's still things where it's like you let it drag on farther than you thought, longer than you should have, or you delay making a decision, or you kind of know. But at least for me, the lessons were, okay, one, where did this pressure come from? One was this competition, this imaginary external competition that I was having with who? Like, no one, right? So forget about that. And then two, I think it's easy to make sure you take care of your team, your employee. That's just no matter what the situation is, you can make the right decision for them, whether it's, being more transparent, making sure that financially you're saying, okay, even if this happens, you're still going to make sure you're okay financially. Like, okay, so I have control of that. And then investors, it's like, why did I need investors for? Was it some kind of like, and you really came down to, I guess it was a form of external validation, or it was like a marketing tool, right? So it's like, okay, why did I take those investors? And on that project, I had money. I was doing it myself, and it was more a couple of people that said, hey, are you raising any money? I'd like to participate. We've done great with Zappos. Let's do this, right? Actually, that was two of them. And then Tony from Zappos, I think, was more just him being supportive and saying, hey, you know what? I'll invest because actually the initial discussions had been like, hey, I'm just kind of bored and restless. Like, why don't I start another division inside the company or something that I could feel like a startup? And, mostly from talking to Alfred, who was this CFO or COO at the time, it was more like, yeah, but like, that'd be okay. But like, we have so many things to focus on. This feels a little bit like the company doing something because you're a little restless. That's not necessarily, it's just going to distract other people, right? So it's like, okay, I'm just going to go do this on my own. And then, right. But I had those three people that I took money from. And part of it was like, it felt good to have someone say, hey, I want to put money in because, it worked out great when I gave you money for Zappos. It's like, all right, cool. Yeah. But then you didn't realize at the time, okay, well, with that person is directly saying, do the same thing again, please. Right. And then, So I realized like, okay, so it was not one to let them down. The amount of money that they put in didn't change anything I could do. And I think to me, it took a long time to get this like sense of this like peace and calm internally that like, I think I have a point of view. I think that just because I think I have a good idea is no guarantee that anyone else will, but I think it's okay. You just try it, right? Before it was like, well, I want validation. I see that happen a lot where it's like, companies where, that I've, have friends with or worked on where it's like, and even I sometimes fall into it where like internally, what you should do, but for some reason you want some external validation from someone on the outside. And then you're like, yep, we should do that. Or you think, it's like sometimes the external, gets weighted more heavily than the internal. And so when you can finally get to the point of like, okay, so for me, it was like, okay, I got to the point of like, so size doesn't matter. What I'm passionate about matters, and failing doesn't matter, right? It's okay. I mean, it's so hard to see, hear, and read stories about people who took business or professional, I don't even call them failures, right? Things that didn't work out as planned so hard and that it affect their personal life. Because you just think, oh man, with the perspective of time, you would have understood like how silly that really is, you know? So yeah, I think, I don't even know. Again, I'm always rambling, so I forgot what I was answering.
No,
but.
no. I think people will definitely pick up on just what that experience was like. Do you remember when does the air become thinner in the room when you realize, man, did I need to take that money? Or not that it was said by these people that were friends of yours, right? And colleagues and obviously big time supporters, just in many different forms and fashions. But at what point does it change in your mind? It's sort of, that you realize, oh my goodness, this is much more than the ones and zeros and commas that are associated with the relationship here, that external.
I think as it happens, I wasn't setting out to raise money. I wasn't didn't really know what I would do with it. It was just kind of a thing that I didn't really probably overthink at the time. And you just kind of realize it's another, the less distractions you can have. It's almost like, I was talking to someone about, we were talking about should a young entrepreneur keep their job and work on their startup on the side or go all in? And it's like, you know what? I think the less distractions you can have, the better. And I actually think trying to figure out how to pay rent is going to be more of a distraction than not being able to use the hours of 9 to 5. So you should, if you're trying to stay focused on a clear vision, but you don't know how you're going to pay rent, it's going to be really hard to do that. And so for me, it was more like, taking money from an investor when I don't know exactly what I would do with it. Right? It's like, would I do anything differently if I took this money or didn't take this money? No, not at the moment. Well, then it's probably better to maintain full flexibility. And I feel like then you have it's much easier to change your mind. Even if it's not pivoting, just change your mind on something or decide, you know what? This isn't $1 billion idea. This isn't $100 million idea. This is just a fun project. And that's okay. I haven't, there's no, a lot of times the team will be, depending on how they're incentivized, is great. That's actually great for us. That feels attainable. And yep, I can see the steps better. And so for me, I've just, I think, a lot of times it's especially today, it's there's almost like fundraising as an accomplishment. So you're I want to start a company. I want to raise money. And then you kind of you want to raise the money to, almost to let everyone know that you raised the money. So then you'll get some external validation of oh, you raised some money, but it's what is it? You don't get to keep the money, you use the money.
The purpose is secondary almost.
Yeah.
Let's pivot using our word earlier. Let's pivot to Moons of Mars. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about how you arrived at this being your next.
Yeah. So I had probably started in 2013. 2013, I was working on I don't even remember what the project was, but it was the tech project I was working on. It was a project called Thread Life, right? And I kind of realized all right, there's a lot of interesting ideas, but I don't have the ability to I'm not a developer, I'm not an engineer, and I can see an opportunity, but I don't really have the ability to take the steps to get there by myself. And evaluating the talent and stuff we need is a little tricky. And so a lot of times in those instances, it's easier to get warped of why are we doing this? Oh, because it's going to be big or there's a big opportunity versus because we have a clear vision of exactly what to do and how to get there. And I had befriended a bunch of UFC fighters and I'd gone down and done their cardio workout. I'm not going to do the fighting workouts, but I was I'll try the cardio workout. I liked it, right? So in my garage, I'd started kind of mimicking their cardio workout and doing it a little bit. And so I ended up setting up a little gym in the warehouse and inviting some friends. And I said, hey, let's do this workout. Anyways, it evolved into kind of a group. And so I ended up opening a gym. And I was talking to someone who was advising on the tech project. And when we talk about this, you've kind of almost, you don't come, I think we were meeting once a week. You don't really come prepared with, it's you haven't thought about it. You're excited about it in the moment. But then it's when our conversation's over, I feel the next time we talk, we're leaving off where that conversation was. You haven't thought, when you talk about when you talk about your gym, which was called Base Camp, your eyes light up and you get all excited and you're talking a mile a minute. And I was yeah. And then it was kind of further validation of well, I guess, what am I doing? That's what excites me. So, but that's not, I was still kind of in that but how big could that be? And is it worth working on? And so then I just kind of decided, and then I opened the gym and I saw this kind of in person and the experience of this is watching everyone work out, tired and sweating and the music's going. And I'm this is great. Right. So there I kind of went into, well, why don't I just worry about this? I lived in Birmingham at the time. Let me just see what I can open. Let me try to create these small experiences where I can kind of like create the whole thing and hire people to help do it. But there's no big part where we're like, oh, that'll take, a long time and we need all these things. And it's hard for me to gauge if it's getting done. So I started opening restaurants and stores and I really liked it. But I felt like I had this hodgepodge of things and I still dabble in like, different tech things. And then in the pandemic, I got into like back into collecting baseball cards and stuff, right? And so I was like, I'm back into baseball cards and I was really enjoying that. And I still thought I was, collecting baseball cards. And I'd start thinking, how much have I spent on sports cards? And then I'd look at like, and how much have I sold? And I'm like, well, this is almost like, this is funny. Like I'm doing this kind of just by myself goofing off, but like, this is almost like company size, So then, and I didn't like dealing with all the physical part of it, of like all these eBay packages arriving and sending them off to get graded and all this stuff. And so then I discovered NBA Top Shot, which was digital trading cards. And I was like, okay, this makes sense. And I wasn't like a super, I wasn't into crypto and I knew what Bitcoin was, but I was just kind of like, I'm so, passionate thinking about other things. I didn't have time to kind of go research or look into it. The same reason I never really invested in tech startups was like, I don't want to do my own. I like creating things and doing things. And two, I clearly don't have enough passion because I'm not spending any time becoming knowledgeable on any vertical or trying to gain any advantage, which would help me make good decisions. So I discovered NBA Top Shot and I was like, wow, they made it easy. Put your credit card in. You understood that like something was happening. There was this transaction happening where it was converting your dollars into something and but they made it pretty seamless for people like me. And I thought, wow, okay, so I don't have to worry about the condition. I don't have to worry about shipping. I buy this thing, it's in my account. That's pretty cool, right? And so then I think along with the rest of the world, or it was a lot of people, that I went into this like, what is this? Then you discovered NFTs and you kind of start going down this hole and you're like, wow, wait a minute. So this is like, it is tech in a way, but it's really just creative. It's like, there's an advantage and a reward to kind of expressing what you have inside, right? Like I thought I would say like Web 2 was, hey, look at me from the outside, and Web 3 and that those people have the advantage, right? Like check me out. Look, like it creates a lot of posturing and these false perceptions and ideas that it's hard for people to live up to, and this comparative thing. And Web 3 is more like, hey, here's what I'm thinking, or here's what I'm seeing inside that I will try to represent. And then it allows other people that are thinking or seeing the same things to kind of get to it. And I thought, okay, so that's interesting. And then I started looking through some of the random projects I'd been working on, right? Like I created this fictional band and I made, a bunch of designs of concert shirts, and just purely for fun. So I had them sitting in a warehouse. I'd been working with a friend from Zappos on like, we're in the pandemic. Let's make like the perfect loungewear. Like, what's really good quality, like loungewear we could make. And so, we've been making that, and I didn't really have a huge plan for it. I'm just working on all these different things. And then I started thinking about, actually right up to the pandemic, I had taken my idea of like, could I create concepts, test them in Burlingame, and then maybe I could franchise them, right? There's a franchising opportunity. Basecamp, I had actually gotten up to 5 locations. I had just sold it to, SE Brands, which is the owner of Anytime Fitness. They were going to franchise it. I became really intrigued with that whole idea. And so I created a boxing workout. I had a chicken sandwich restaurant. I had a nachos restaurant. And I was like, I'm going to build a company that takes these ideas and puts them all over. And I realized, wait, I think, like the boxing gym, for example, we opened the second location, or we built the second location. It was going to open March 15th, 2020. Well, the world shut down on March 11th. So basically built a location and closed it. So all these things happened where it was like, I was all in on just, kind of coming up with ideas, visually driven ideas, and finding a small community. And so when I discovered NFTs, I thought, okay, so not only is it like a great opportunity to, kind of build IP around what you've got on the inside, it's also, a really easy way to find people that are interested in similar things. There's tech involved, but it's not too complicated for someone like me to understand, right? Like there's like, okay, this is how it works. And it's really places a lot of the value on the IP and the community over, the development skills. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something there. How does it all tie together? And so then I started thinking back to things I was working on and like, well, what you need is you're never going to be the guy that has one very focused, clear idea that you want to just go like this. You want to embrace the ability to have a bunch of different ideas and constantly, pursuing things, but they've always felt disconnected. And suddenly I thought, well, if I could create a platform, right? I could create a platform that I could attract an audience, a community of people who were interested in that same vibe or ideal, right? Of like, because I think what's interesting, the other interesting thing about it, sorry, I'm all over the place, is like, let's say I was going to create actually the gym, I decided, I'm just going to do this myself. So I was I made up the workouts. So I was in the garage doing it. And then I was like, this is kind of boring. Why don't I get, I need that motivation of being in the gym and having people around me pushing me. So we created an audio version where we just recorded ourselves as teammates and kind of redid each of the workouts. So you put your headphones on. It's almost that same commitment as, I just say, hey, you put your foot in the gym, you're probably going to do the workout. The hardest part is getting to the gym. So it was like, well, let's just recreate that where it's put the headphones on. Your teammates will be in your ears telling you, let's go. You're going to do this. It's that same feeling. So I thought to myself, well, okay, what would I do with that, right? Like, let's say I'm not going to franchise locations. Let's say I'm going to take this streaming workout and I was going to turn it into a business. I have to now go and, find people who are interested. I'm going to do ads to try to find people who are interested in this workout. I'm going to be compared to bigger companies that are going to, put the pricing as low as they can just to bring in the masses, right? So all of a sudden, like the economics are not going to work of what I have to spend to find a customer versus what I'm going to be able to charge them. And I was like, wow, but with Web3, it's like, it's hard to explain. It's like you almost like the NFT becomes, or the token becomes, it goes and finds its audience. It's like the audience, it will find its way to the right person. Someone might buy it because they think they want to speculate on price. Someone might buy it because they think it's visually interesting, but eventually it can keep finding its way. And it kind of showed with Bored Apes, for example, like, you look at it and go, wow, I mean, obviously that's not common, right? This is like the runaway success, but you go, wait a minute, there's 5,000 holders. There's only 5,000 people. Let's say there's 10,000 of these apes, or even let's, add in the mutants and the dogs and everything, but it's still a small number where if you were starting a traditional company, you'd be like, how many users do we need? And you get millions, hundreds of thousands. I don't know. And you realize 5,000. Yeah. You say that and people will be like, that's too small. So then you realize, but wait, why? Well, it's because they're creating, the community feels so valuable that, and there's a business that works for smaller communities and is still exciting. And then you could find ways to onboard more people. So I just thought, okay, like let's take the most basic idea. What if, let's create art, right? Let's create art. We need to create a planet, because where we're going with all these different ideas and concepts is we need a town. We're not going to have one town that we live in, and we're going to ask people and going to reach out to people who are there. The town's going to be the whole world. So we need to build a platform which will be big enough where we can kind of set the tone. And from there, we can launch things. And the other great thing about Web3 is we can do it together, right? We can create systems where everyone is kind of rowing in the same direction, right? The community, can help make decisions and can feel a real like equity and ownership in the brand. And so it's like, okay, if you can create a planet as a platform, then anything that would make sense on Earth, right, would make sense on that planet. So you can, feel comfortable going in a direction, knowing, hey, whatever ideas come up or opportunities arise, at least we've laid a foundation that can support that. So that became exciting. And it's like, look, if you can combine art with storytelling, with, gameplay, and then on top of that, together with the community launch brands that have value in this, metaverse, but also in real life, we don't overthink it. Like, we're people on Earth doing stuff online. We don't have to choose between real life or online. Like, there's ways to, as long as you keep it simple, like don't try to, with the skill set you have, you don't want to go and try to recreate like a 3D world where you feel like you're in it. Just take like the mechanics that are out there that make sense and but make sure you're true to it, right? So make sure that you're making the decisions based on, really building a community and really, adding value for everyone, being able to be creative, and then you'll be able to find that audience. You'll be able to find a community that shares those same values or thinks the same things exciting. And then again, it's still tricky because it's still social media driven, and still you see these big numbers flying around. So it's still, you have to remind yourself every once in a while, like, hey, it's easy to say, is there a shortcut by getting people that are, attracting these people? Or wait, how will we stack up? And like, is this just going to be a small project or a big project? And so it's actually fun. And I feel like that's why I really feel like this is what everything led up to was. It's creativity, it's art driven, it's creating brands, it's getting communities together.
It's your universe. I mean, if you think about it, you were building. You had restaurants, you're putting together gyms, like you're doing like in real time in the physical space that we occupy. And now you have this ecosystem that has no limits. There's no ceiling to it at all. Where are we at right now with Moons of Mars? Just how many people are involved? Like, are we public now? Is it?
Yeah. So we got a small team. There 4 or 5, plus we have a dev shop, Southworks, that we've been working with for a long time. So we've got the technical capabilities,
the muscle.
That are trying to, we'll use the experts for that. But no, we've been heads down for. I mean, a lot of the projects had started a lot before, but kind of since this vision kind of took shape, in about 6 months, and so we're getting ready to do our mint on December 10th of the initial chapter, right? So it's basically the project's called Moons of Mars, and basically where there's going to be a planet, Hellebore, which is going to be the undiscovered third moon of Mars. But that's going to start with chapter 1 is a concert, right? So we have this idea for this fictional band, the Fated with a T. And so you'll buy a ticket to the show, right? So you'll buy a ticket to the show. That ticket will eventually reveal your character, which is your identity on this new planet. And then from there, every chapter there'll be, new characters, new collectibles that kind of continue to tell the story. And also we'll launch brands during each chapter. And we have, a lot of stuff. We also have a game. So we've been developing this game because one of the thoughts was like, well, how do you don't want to put a project out there and say, hey, this is this awesome, fun thing, and like, we're going to be a community, and then just here's the art, and then here's some more art, right? So it started off with all these things that were kind of running independently of like, what if we could make a simple game? And it's like, okay, well, how would the game work? And hey, the game would help us, what if we took the community and organized them into tribes, and then the tribes competed with each other in a simple game? We don't need to immerse ourselves in like a first person, like roaming the world game. Let's just use, what if we made predictions about events on Earth, and we used that as like something we could rally around and compete with. And then, based on the results of that, we can figure out like how the tribes are rewarded and how they stack up against each other. So we're trying to really do 3 things or 4 things. 1 is create a platform where the possibilities are endless. 2 is, once we seed the population with this initial rowdy rock crowd from a concert from, December 31st, 1999, then we have them organized into tribes. We let the community figure out what that means, right? Like, hey, you'll be able to tell what tribe you're in or what tribe your NFT is in. And then they'll organize around that, have the tribes compete, provide, so there's gameplay, and, continue to add to the gameplay, but keep it light, keep it where the game doesn't feel like a job. The game doesn't feel like you have to invest a whole bunch of time. It's just a way to stay engaged and to kind of form tribes. Add a collectible component, right? So something where you're collecting either just for the sake of collecting or with some game theory of like, well, what happens if I collect these 5? Should I then keep them? Should I trade them in for this? Should I let them convert to that? And then launch brands that are fun, that make sense. Obviously we've got ideas. We've already got the first few mapped out. Tie them into the story. So this, the story continues to develop through the collectibles. The collectibles will almost be like a concert poster art that continues to tell the story. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting, and just have a model of like, hey, we're going to have a chapter. A chapter will introduce a species or some sort of character, involve gaming, launch a couple of brands, have the community own the brands. So we'll set those up as DAOs so the community actually has a voice and has a say. And then I think, and kind of say, and then let's see what happens in the next chapter, but we'll just kind of commit to that same process. We'll add stuff to it. Something's not working. We'll we'll take it out, but there should be no end. It's like a new population, you know? So that's the idea. And we just got to find those, the first mint's going to be 8,000 NFTs. So not huge. They're going to be 0.05 ETH. So we're not expensive, because I want it to be, I don't want price to be a barrier. I want people to be excited. And I really want to embrace that idea of like this could be your entry point, or this could be, you could have already and be involved in a bunch of other projects. But like, there's that energy, right? We put a tweet out the other day, like, hey, listen, what was through the band's account, the Faded Fake account, was like, if you walk down the street, you're out at some, event week or whatever, and you see a long line with a bouncer evaluating you and people clamoring to get into this club, and then you see a dive bar with no line, we're looking for the people who they don't even have to think for 2 seconds. Well, I'm going to go into the dive bar, right? Because we're going to go to the dive bar. We're going to have fun. It doesn't matter. It's actually one of the things I really enjoy is like, and the whole anon versus doxing yourself part is hard, because for me, I love it. Like, I don't like talking about Zappos. To me, it's like, who wants to talk about something they did 15, 20 years ago all the time? Like, tomorrow's exciting. Yesterday already happened. And so I really like, and I'm really trying to embrace the Web3 part of like, and I think it's what should be exciting for everyone is like, what you did doesn't matter. Anyone can do this. Do you have an idea inside of you? People literally, this guy yesterday had a successful project, and it just looked like he took a Sharpie and drew something, but he'd spent time, with his comedy and sarcasm building up a following on Twitter, and just like put out a project that was like, hey, this is a representation of that. And so it's like, some people you can, and it's up to you. You can make a bunch of promises like, here's what's going to happen in the roadmap. There's other projects that say, we have no idea what's going to happen. The space is moving so fast.
We're all co-authors in that regard.
Yeah.
Let's
talk. 6 months old. It's crazy. It's like, it feels like it's 10 years.
Let's talk big picture, Nick, in the time that we have left. You've mentioned Web 3.0, and for many outside of those that I think are technically proficient, it is the ether. Like, I don't think the everyday or average Joe or, soccer mom or whatever label we want to give, people will understand what a Web 3.0 might mean to them in their lives.
Yeah.
If we take that and we think about moons of Mars, and I'm going to be curt about this, but it's because I want to get to the rawness of you in this manner, given your history and what you have experienced and learned and that sort of a thing. But why do you give a shit?
It's fun. It's fun, and it's like, why not?
But it wakes you up. It wakes you up. Like, I get the sense it's the kind of thing where it's freedom for you. It's taking you out of the physical and into the digital, which is freeing. It's like an artist that has unending supplies of paint.
And it's just so simple. It's like, hey, this is defined. Everyone can see it. Everyone can see what's happening. It's very easy to understand, like, who owns what or who's doing what or how to do something. And I think that, like, if you look at, if I look at Basecamp as an example, right? So I moved from Burlingame. But I follow on Instagram and I watch the gym, and you see this group of people that are so passionate about their daily workouts, some of which I recognize from when I was still there doing it, and some of which I don't recognize. You think, wow, like it doesn't really matter. Like, it's like there was a time when I was the only person doing that workout. And then I was a time when I was one of 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people. It doesn't matter. It's like the brand lives on. And I think what's interesting, even a long time ago, I had started a company called Ranked. And my thought at the time was, and it wasn't really started a company. It was more like a project that I started working on and then decided that I wasn't going to work on. But it was basically, a friend had said, I said, hey, I don't wear Nike because Zappos, they won't sell to Zappos. I only for Adidas, or Vans, but now Nike's going to sell to Zappos. I'm going to start wearing it. And they were like, I could think Nike could care less. And it was just that simple comment. I know we laughed, like, who cares? Nike does not care what you wear. I was like, but shouldn't they? Like, shouldn't they care, like, if I wear it or not? And shouldn't also the fact that I might have 50 pairs of Nikes in my closet, shouldn't they know that, right? Versus someone who had none. So I was to start a company, and my thought was like, what's already happened, it would take too long to figure out this loyalty going forward. Let's just have everyone upload everything that's in their closet. And then let's let brands figure out, oh, wow, these people have been big supporters of mine. And it's almost like you go to Starbucks, you don't sign up for the rewards program because you're like, well, I've already been here every day for the last 2 years. I want those points, not the points in the future. So I look at Web3 and I think, well, this is a chance for people to find something that they're as equally as passionate about as the founders or the executives or anyone, and say, hey, I want a piece of this. I want to stake my claim and I want to show my allegiance and I want to be rewarded for that. And I'm going to grab that token or that NFT. And it's just a really easy and clean and like fun way for a community to be aligned of like, we are literally all in this together. We'll share in the value. We'll create value together. We'll make decisions together. Obviously that varies from project to project, but like, it just feels like there's no friction. It's like, what I keep saying to the team is like, so our friction is, why would anyone care in the beginning? We're one of a million projects. Like, there's no reason anyone would care. It's going to be hard to get people to haven't, spent the years building up a huge social following where they're clamoring for like, hey, what's next? But like, isn't that awesome? Like, we're literally starting from zero. Everyone that signs up or buys an NFT or joins our Discord will be doing it because they're interested in the project, not because they're expecting anything based on the past or the future. And then, from there, if they're still interested in the project, they'll hold the NFT. Or maybe they'll decide, you know what, I really love this project, but this thing's increased in value. I think I'm going to sell it now. But if they don't, in a traditional, I guess, in the physical world, someone says, I don't like this workout anymore. I don't like this food anymore. They leave, but you don't even know they've left until you eventually realize they didn't come back. It's just so, now it's like, this NFT, oh, look, it's sold. It's sold to this person. Maybe that person, it wasn't what they thought it was, or they were too busy, or they just didn't like it, or they found something better. But there's a really simple way for them to now onboard their replacement, and that person can then come and see how they experience it. And so I think that's like fascinating to watch. And it's fascinating to watch even on Twitter and social media, like people rally around these projects or literally have something in common. That's like, I have something in common with you, and let's like communicate around that, which is much harder. Especially if I'm not the most extroverted. I mean, I ramble forever on a phone call, but like, I'm like probably the worst chit chatter / networker in the world. Like, I hate that. My small talk is
no glass
terrible.
of Chardonnay.
No, because my brain's spinning like this. I'm thinking of these ideas. Like, I just get lost in these things. And so this is like,
you want to spend time with a whiteboard.
Yeah. It's a really fun, cool way to know like who's in this community and like, and kind of share that with them and still have there's still a business, right? There's still a business model that makes sense, but the business model only makes sense if you genuinely include the community in that model. So it's also very easy to see. And also like this thing to keep you in check of like, hey, if you're full of it,
you be full of shit.
You're full of shit and you're just paying lip service to this idea of we're going to build a community. Everyone can see that the community didn't embrace that.
It's just a facade.
That. Yeah. So there's no, you can't get on Instagram and try to explain this is what's happening when people can clearly see, no, it's not. That's not what's happening. Your community is not.
All ships rise with the tide, right? I mean, it's that.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, but you answered it. I was going to ask you, well, basically, if that's why you give a shit, like, why should we? But I feel like you touched on that in a number of different ways. I'm going to share with you my impression, and as we close, and then I want you to kind of say, Rod, you're full of it, kind of a thing, right?
If you say this sucks and you hang up, then I'm gonna be left speechless.
That's right. But I think it's important when it comes to being an entrepreneur because what I love about what you're talking about, and you're educating me, and I hope the audience, just in this new, I interpret you as an explorer, right? So whether that resonates or not, but this willingness to explore the unknown, to peek around the corner and see sort of what emerges. And I think that's incredible. I think we need more of that, not less, especially when I think about young kids and are we supporting that kind of an idea. But from an entrepreneur perspective, being an entrepreneur for most accounts can be a very lonely, isolating experience. And as you grow and gain success or achieve success, it can be even that much more isolating because you almost embattle or you battle yourself and what you think you're reflecting to the masses, right? That pressure of I got to have $1 billion idea. And my sense is that while you were building restaurants in real time and in real life and gyms and these sorts of things, you were doing your darndest, which makes so much sense in building this community of things that allowed you to interact and develop relationships and sort of keep your life progressing in that regard. But this is 3.0. I mean, you don't have to be Nick who founded Zappos, right? You're just a part of the human race. You're a creative guy who wants to see where the light can take you and others without barriers, right? There's no barrier. So someone can collaborate with you and participate through this Web 3.0 experience in these projects. And that probably feels like a sense of community to you. Is that fair? It feels like it's like when we're all kids on the playground. We want to be able to play with other kids, right? And we might change the things we like to do in that playground, but we're social beings. And it feels like through your arc, this is a fantastic next step for an explorer that wants no limitations, no barriers, and wants to be the dive bar that allows that comfort that I can be who I want to be, and I don't have to be something that the outside expect. Fair or foul?
Fair. Yeah. I mean, I think it's the great equalizer. You know, it's like we're 8,000 people interested in this, and there's no tiers. You know, it's not like you walk in a restaurant. Yeah, maybe every once in a while there's a restaurant that says, I'm going to put this person at the windows. But usually it's like, you know, you buy your token and you buy your NFT and you're part of it. I think it's a simple entry, which I would advise anyone that hasn't done it. Just get in there and just, you know, buy an NFT, join, like follow a community on Twitter, and it'll just, you know, it might not. Some people aren't interested in these things, but for me at least, it lit a fire where, you know, it's just very genuine. You know, we can just see like, you know, look, maybe no one wants to be part of this community. Like, okay, like maybe no one's, you know, that might happen, but like,
and maybe that's the summation. I mean, maybe it's that at this stage in your life, you are okay in a positive way, right? With the unknown. Like the unknown is okay. It's not unsettling. It's not anxiety provoking. It's information. It's relationship. It's data. It's, you know, it's time spent, and that you'll learn from that and continue to grow because you're not fearing failure anymore.
Yeah. No, you have to have, you know, in any business, right? You have to have an idea. Then you have to get people interested in that idea. And then you have to see if they want to stick around and invest in that business. And then you try to find a way where then those that have invested in the business can actually share in the future value of the business. And this is just a very simple way of like, a lot of times you get stuck at steps, right? You build a product, you know, like I think a lot of people would like this, but I don't really know how to reach them. I don't know how to do the market. I don't know how to market. I was like, oh,
we'll get to that later.
I found this, but like, and I found the people, but the price isn't right, you know? And so like Web3, it's like, well, they'll establish their own value of what the price should be. And that's what it will trade at. It's like, okay. And then I don't know, you know, why did they leave? Was it not creating enough value? I mean, the good thing about Web3 is like, if it's interesting, they'll find you. And if you create enough value for them, they should stick around. And if you don't create enough value for them, they will not stick around, and you'll be able to see that. And you'll be like, this didn't work. So the idea was like very basic. Like if I was eating in a restaurant and I saw someone from the gym eating in that restaurant, it was like, wow, this is awesome. They're supporting, they're interested in both these ideas, which really have nothing to do with each other. In fact, they could be considered counterproductive to go to the gym and then eat nachos afterwards. Right. But now it's like, and it would often lead to those conversations of like, hey, you know, it'd be cool if you could open a, this, or hey, you know, we also need this, or we did that. It's like now really the goal is like, let's find that community and let's have those conversations together and be like, great, let's do this and that. And, you know, find a way, you know, there has to be an aesthetic and a vibe that the community kind of enjoys, but then anything's possible. You know, we could like anything that's on earth, we can recreate because we're not taking it away from Earth. We're trying to, create, new brands and new games and new relationships that can exist in two places. And I think you're already seeing that with like, projects where people are like, even the whole idea of like, having the commercial rights to your character and stuff. And those decisions it's like, wow, okay, that's really interesting. Like, and that was another thing that kind of got me going. I was like, okay, so I have the commercial rights to this, but what can I do? It's like, well, if we can kind of like start to unlock those things, then all of a sudden it becomes really exciting and has the chance to be really big, but it's at the small levels. Like, it's like, here's a big platform and here's a bunch of people that are taking IP they've developed and we're giving them an opportunity to, create something there. And here's things we're coming up with. So I'm just really excited about the whole thing. And I know it's going to be, I wondered how I would feel once we actually announced the project of like, and I feel happy in that there's no expectations. I didn't feel any, I tell people, we're not preordained to be popular or like to have a great project. We start at zero, just like everyone else. We'll find people one at a time. We'll build a community. And then as long as we continue adding value, it'll be a lot of fun for everyone. Well,
and I think people they're gonna love watching and hopefully joining the journey along with you. As we close, it's your little bit, and I say this, I say this hopefully with the spirit intended, but you are sort of the Web 3.0 version of Forrest Gump, right? There are fantastic stories that you come from, and you bring all these different experiences as an entrepreneur, and now so many, the masses get to be a part of what's inside your brain in a very creative, non-limiting environment that hopefully will bore out incredible new opportunities for people and new learnings along the way. But there's a vibe, there's a rhythm to you, even the way in which you talk about your passions that I think really relates to people and how they want to get out of their preconceived notion of what it means to be sort of in this world as we're figuring ourselves out. So I think it's a fantastic example of what an entrepreneurial mind and spirit is outside of being a classic entrepreneur. And that to me is 3.0. So we want to thank Nick Swinmurn. He is the founder. Check out Moons of Mars, his new effort and project, which sounds, I'm very interested in now, and I didn't know a whole heck of a lot about Web 3.0 and NFTs, but I feel that much more informed, so I'm looking forward to it. But check out, Nick, where can they go on social media to learn more about Moons of Mars? I want to make sure they can get connected. Yeah, it's at Moons of Mars NFT. On Twitter, I'm at Coast Talk. That's my anonymous name. And then our website is moonsofmars.xyz. Wonderful. So yeah, appreciate it. Thanks a lot for letting me ramble, and I enjoyed the conversation, and you got me even more excited. I'm ready to get back to work. Well, there you go. See, it's like we've been in Web 3.0 just in this discussion. Well, Nick, we want to thank you again. Check out Moons of Mars. You'll see that in the story and also through my post of this discussion. But once again, I want to thank Nick and all that he's doing, and I feel that much more creative. I've been your host today, Dr. Rod Berger.
Thanks for taking the plunge into HeadRoom, where we uncover the why behind the what and who impacting our lives. HeadRoom is a production of Rainlight and co-produced by our friends at Old Soul. I'm your host, Dr. Rod Berger, and this is HeadRoom.